All right, good evening. It's April 16th. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Larkspur City Council. I'm Vice Mayor Andre, sitting in for Mayor Way, who is away because her first grandbaby is on the way. So congratulations to Mayor Way. It is 6:31 and I will call the meeting to order. And can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Candell,
I am here.
Councilmember Margulies,
Here.
Councilmember Paulson,
Here.
Vice Mayor Andre.
Here. Thank you. And if you can please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, great. So we will move to public comment. This is a time for members of the public to address this council regarding items that are not on the agenda. If you have public comment, please approach the podium, give us your name, and you have 3 minutes. Great, welcome.
Hello, all. Hi, I'm Barbara Friday, and I live at 66 Meadowood. And the reason I'm here this evening, and I hope you don't mind, I'm going to read from my notes just so I don't forget anything. But I'm here to invite you to Touch Trucks on Sunday, May 4th. This year, we'll have approximately 30 trucks and drivers to explore. And since the event falls on Sunday, May 4th, we're celebrating with a modest Star Wars theme and have invited stormtroopers and other Star Wars characters to attend that day. So Larky will be with us. There'll be great food options like Johnny Donuts and fresh pizza, and it'll be a fun and festive day at the East parking lot at Redwood High School. But most importantly, I wanted to thank my friends at the City of Larkspur staff for their help organizing the event. Nick Stone, Julian Skinner, Damon Hill have all been wonderful. And thank you very much, Dan, because I know they have your support and I appreciate all their great insight and dedication. So finally, I urge each of you to buy a ticket, whether you plan to attend or not, because this is a fundraiser for the library and it supports the purchase of books and materials in the children's room in the new Larkspur Library. So we've had some bookmarks printed, which is what fell to the floor while I was approaching. Oh my goodness. Is it okay if I pass them out? All right. Thank you very much. Hope to see you there. Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else with public comment? Okay, see none. We have presentations, of which there are none. So we will move to approval of the consent calendar. Are there any items on the consent calendar that one of the council members or members of the public want to remove for discussion?
Yes, I was hoping to remove item 4.6 for discussion.
Okay. 4.6, authorizing the city manager to execute a side letter to the memorandum of understanding between the city of Larkspur and the Larkspur Miscellaneous Employees Association regarding a bilingual pay incentive. Okay. Should we, Mr. City Manager, should we discuss that item first and then move to the rest of the items, or?
I've had a chance to talk to Councilmember Margulies. I think her questions are substantive enough that I would pull it, deal with the rest of the consent calendar separately.
Okay. All right. So, all right. So should we make a motion to move? Oh, okay, great. Thank you. All right. So should we move the rest of the items first and then discuss item 4.6?
Yes.
Okay. Well, can I get a motion to move the consent calendar minus item 4.6?
I will make that motion.
Second.
great. Do you need a roll call, Allison, or can we just? Okay.
Need one, you're all here, so you can do.
Okay.
just say it.
All right,
favor.
so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anyone is same? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so why don't I,
I'm gonna invite the assistant city manager
oh,
up.
okay,
She's
great,
gonna give a brief presentation. And
great, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Shannon O'Hare and I am the assistant to the city manager. I will provide a brief staff report this evening on this item, and then I'm happy to answer any question that the council or the community may have. So the item that was pulled from the consent calendar is the consideration of a side letter with the Larkspur Miscellaneous Employees Association for the city to instate a bilingual pay incentive. The impetus for this item is that the city manager has identified the value of incorporating bilingual skills to strengthen our connection with our community and provide better services. Currently, there are sufficient interactions with people in our community who are more comfortable communicating in Spanish than English for us to warrant an investment in translation services. Folks chatting on the side here. Staff thinks that way to deliver these services cost effectively with we can deliver this cost effectively with existing and future staff members by formally integrating bilingual capabilities into our workforce. And so we have a number of members of our staff who have communicated that they are proficient in Spanish, either verbally, written, or both. So the city, sorry. Sorry, I lost my place here. So currently, our established practice is that some employees communicate with community members in other languages on an informal basis, but not on a formal basis where it's incorporated into their job duties and expectations. The city manager believes that if we identify a process to designate employees as qualified people to engage our community in other languages, that it would be useful. The designation would mean that the employee would be available on demand to members of the community to provide translation. And so to get to the bilingual pay incentive part of this, in recognition of this formal designation and this skill, the city would offer a pay incentive. The pay incentive is currently proposed to be $200 a month flat for verbal proficiency and $250 a month for both verbal and written capabilities. So that works out for folks doing math, that it's $2,400 to $3,000 per employee. It's anticipated right now that with our current staff and interest in the program, there are 3 employees interested. So you're looking at a maximum of $9,000 in the immediate term. We anticipate that participation and interest in this incentive would have multiple staff on our payroll at any given time receiving the pay incentive. For the benefit of the council and the community, this pay incentive is not automatic. So there's a few things that need to happen. One, the department head, the city manager needs to identify that there's an operational benefit. The department head needs to identify the employee and the reason for the need for translation. And then third, there is testing that would be involved to determine that folks are proficient in order to receive the pay. So that is the conclusion of the brief verbal report, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Okay, should I start? Thank you, Shannon, for that update and report. So the reason I wanted to pull it off was, as technology is advancing pretty quickly, I do feel that that is something we should be considering for pretty much no cost to be able to provide translation services. I also have concerns at a time when we're looking to really keep a tight budget with introducing new costs. These costs are not just payroll, but they also apply to pension. So there'll be increased costs there. Having an employee on demand also represents an opportunity cost because that person is working on something at the time somebody comes to the desk or needs the translation service. There's also a cost for the city manager to develop the process for the testing and qualifying for proficiency, so at which level they'll get paid. There's also the pension cost, and then, you know, multiple employees, which didn't have how many employees at this point in time qualify for that. So you mentioned that there are 3 at this point in time, but as we move forward, there may become more who qualify. And so I do have concerns about the costs, even though it seems nominal as put on a per monthly basis. Over time, it adds up. And again, you know, we are at a time where we're really trying to be very tight with our costs. So I wanted to open it to our council for discussion. You know, Apple is about to introduce AirPods that do real-time translation. They're not here yet, but the point is that if somebody's talking to you in Spanish, it'll translate into your ear in English what they're saying. And there are absolutely translation services that you can use for free on your phone that, you know, you do have to type in. But the other question I have is, you know, maybe an example of what an employee would be tasked to do in this case, because I'm guessing that Spanish is the #1 language that we're being asked to translate. Maybe you can corroborate that. But what happens when another language like Vietnamese or something else then becomes a language that we're hearing often? And then are we going to need to find people who are proficient in those languages as well? So in some ways, it's setting a precedent. And I respect and appreciate our want to service the community, but to me, this seems like a very premium service. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. I've said my points.
So just a couple of questions, Shannon, for context. I'm wondering which departments need this the most, and I like numbers, but just roughly how many, people have approached like in a given month, or a given, period of time needing this, just so I can get a sense for what the demand is and which departments. Is it like Parks and Rec, or is it planning, or which?
So the kinds of assistance, and I do want to actually say something for the benefit of the public listening, et cetera. This is a bilingual pay incentive policy to enhance service where we think that there is a benefit and an operational benefit. We have engaged translation services when we feel like in order to serve the community, it absolutely needs to be translated. So as part of our housing element update, there were public workshops that were also held in Spanish. As part of our rent stabilization program, we work with a contractor that if someone calls up, folks are available in both English and Spanish to answer landlord or tenant questions. So when we think that we will not be able to deliver effective services unless there's that, we make sure to take care of that. This is really about service enhancement and connecting with our community. So it looks different in different departments. I don't have exact numbers, but the use cases when we spoke with department heads is certainly the front counter here in the community development department. We don't have a designated staff person where some other cities you may see customer service representative as a designated position. Really, the administrative assistant or the permit technician is a lot of times when people have catch-all questions where they just need to know about city services. There's somebody at the front counter who can at least point them in the right direction, even if they're not going to be using the community development department on something that's related to planning or building. So that's one of the uses. Our community services department both expressed that, again, there weren't numbers behind this of how many inquiries are there a week, but there is a consistent use case for it. And particularly when we look at the demographics of Larkspur, exactly when you look at the American Community Survey and the census data, it shows that about 9% of our community speaks Spanish at home. That's the metric they use. On Piper Park on the weekends, less than half of the usage of Piper Park is from Larkspur residents. It's really a regional park. So the demographics in the community who uses that come from all over the county and all over the Bay Area. And there's consistent requests for facilitation for field rentals, picnic table rentals, and just general uses of the parks where folks have asked if people can speak in Spanish. And then on the library side, there's a lot of benefit to where people might be able to get by and get services, but in terms of engaging a reference librarian or ability to provide on-staff bilingual story time, there'd be additional opportunities.
Okay, one more question. So would it be possible to pilot this? Like, I appreciate Councilmember Margulies, thoughts. I think, one concern is if you do offer this, how difficult is it to roll it back for any number of reasons, including budgetary?
Great. So I wanted to actually, again, mainly for the benefit of the community, this was in the staff report, but I didn't mention it in the verbal report. In terms of the opportunity cost of providing translation and people being taken away from their main job to translate, it is designated as you are expected to do on-demand translation. But it has also in this bilingual pay incentive policy that you won't be regularly asked to do things that aren't part of your job. So except in emergency situations, which outside of this, all bets are off. We're all emergency service workers, so that lives on its own. But it would usually be providing translation for somebody who's there asking for city resources. In terms of piloting it, what we saw in our research is any kind of incentive pay is established as an ongoing benefit. I haven't seen a pilot project. In the policy, it does say that the city manager can end the program at any time for budgetary reasons and discontinue it. So we can stop it. We don't have a commitment as part of the side letter in the MOU where it would be very difficult to roll back. At the same time, I don't want to offer employees a benefit if we're uncertain about it, only to take it away immediately or not move forward with the program. I don't think that's a great approach to it. I also wouldn't want to set expectations in the community where folks know like, if there's somebody available on library staff who might be able to provide on-demand translation, and then we decide to pull that back, then we take that away from the community in a very short amount of time. Doesn't make a lot of intuitive sense from where I'm standing.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Vice Mayor, may
Yes, please.
I? I guess my comments based on Councilman Margulies's comments. I use, and I'm not up here to plug any special products, but we use Google Translate at my office. And I just this week had somebody who came in speaking Punjabi, an Indian dialect. And it was so easy in the sense that you can talk into it. You don't have to type it. You talk into it and it translates it in writing. Or you can actually have a conversation where you put it on like a two-way, where you each talk into it in the other language and it translates it kind of simultaneously. And it seems like that might be a first step to say, hey, let's try that. And if it doesn't work, then we can, move into something else. But I hear the concern about with all the costs that go into pensions and everything else, related to government employee salaries. And at a time where we're trying not to burden ourselves right now and perpetually into the future, it might make sense to try something like that first as an inexpensive, you have at each place, you have an iPad with a Google Translate and you see if it works. And if you come back in a month or a couple months, say, you know what, we tried that, it didn't work, then maybe this is something we move on to after that. So reading the body language of our city manager, it looks like you may disagree, and I'm happy to hear your thoughts. But those are probably my initial thoughts after after the discussion.
I don't disagree. I just want to offer maybe a little different perspective. One of the questions we have to ask ourselves as the government is, do we provide service and meet the people, or do the people have to figure out how to engage us? I can't answer that question. That is a community policy question. And that's at the heart of this. If we pay real people to do real-time translation in their native language with a native speaker, that's a different type of customer service than you're describing. And you have to help us decide what that customer service should look like. I'm perfectly happy to instruct the staff to use technology. It's a different type of customer service. So one of the questions is what are we projecting out to that portion of our customer base and our community?
And I don't disagree with that. But I think as government, we make choices, and I have heard from contractors, that sometimes it is challenging, to get things through in a quick way. Either there's not sufficient staff there, or whatever their concerns are, they have to use some software program that they're not familiar with. And that's a choice that we make. We say, yeah, we could have somebody there all day, every day, but it's a cost, and at some point we have to say, we're going to try to meet people where we can meet people and have it balanced. Anyway, those are my comments. I'll give it back to you, the vice mayor at this point.
Okay, great. So on Councilmember Candel's question, if we wanted to go the route of technology, do we have that, or would we have to spend resources acquiring iPads or?
So we can't ask employees to use their personal devices to serve the city. So every employee has a laptop. We'd have to figure out how to use it with a laptop, or we'd have to purchase tablets for the various desks. So
I would like to ask a question about our Microsoft subscription because I'm pretty sure that their Copilot product has translation.
so I'm not arguing I can't install it on a laptop. I'm just
Okay.
saying that's the device we would be using. 'Cause
Yeah.
we can't ask the employees
To use
their
a personal.
devices for this purpose. So
I guess I have another question with respect to the pension costs. I am, it's like that this, adding to payroll does impact multi-year. Is there a way to structure the incentives so that it's more one-time bonus type of payment rather than an ongoing, where it's incorporating to salary, then it grows every year, then we got pension costs on top of that. So pretty soon the numbers start to multiply.
No, it's a great question. By law, this is what's considered pensionable incentive pay. So we're regulated and we have a bilingual pay incentive policy. It's one of the buckets of compensation that's pensionable.
Okay. And currently, are you saying that our current employees are performing this function, but it's just part of their normal duties? Or how is it currently how are we currently doing things?
So currently, if someone asks for city services and someone wants to serve a member of the public in a language other than English, which has been Spanish in our use cases, some employees have opted to do that on occasion. The difference with the policies, this would become part of your job duties. So you would be expected as part of receiving this pay, if someone came up and was Spanish speaking and seemed like they preferred translation or to converse in Spanish, that you would be the person made available if it's in your department to chat with them and help provide resources to them. So.
And where do you think the department of greatest need is right now?
it's actually one we're not prepared to provide the service to, I think, which is the library.
Yeah.
Library has a significant need for translation. You'd actually be surprised if you came here in the morning, how many non-English speakers are present in the library. Usually with English speaking children, but the adult is often doesn't speak English or speak it particularly well.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, just to kind of close my thoughts, I think the technology angle works, kind of being a multilingual person. I think there's something to be said for, the face of the city and the diversity and the inclusivity of the city. And that comes with a price. And, I'm wondering if we could structure this. I really value efficiency. And I think it could be hand in hand. We could have the devices, but also I think the people, there's something about talking to someone. I mean, as an example, I'm a fluent German speaker. And, I go to Germany, they all speak English so well, but the moment I speak German, there's a level of trust. Everything shifts. And I think that's a value. So that leads me to want to do this. However, I don't see a cap here. If I knew it was 2 employees in the library, I would feel more comfortable than not knowing how many this might be. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, so there's a number in terms of how many folks would be receiving this benefit. There's already 2 levels of the city manager for folks who don't know our city manager well, he doesn't approve things easily necessarily. As well as a department head identified that there's a need for if there were multiple staff people, multiple folks taking this benefit. Additionally, in terms of just practicality, again, you never know what your staff composition will look like. If we have not advertised to where we say, this is a job where it's expected that you speak Spanish, right, as part of the job requirement. it would be if an employee was otherwise the strongest qualified for a job at the, at the time of hiring or recruitment, that if they were eligible for this incentive, they could take it. So again, I can't see into the future, but I think that looking historically at how our recruitments are and who applies to work in the city of Larkspur, that would be pretty unlikely. That we'd have a whole department that would.
Right.
Incentive, and of the department heads when the department heads have talked about this, no department has identified that they think there's an operational benefit to having all their staff members, a majority of their staff members, receiving this.
Yeah, I mean, just as a, kind of seat of the pants friendly amendment, maybe if we were to say, we'll do 2 of these, and if we find that there's a lot more demand, we would just revisit it, that I would feel comfortable with that. I mean, I have expressed why I think this is a good idea. I do appreciate, technology and cost savings, but, I don't know if that's possible in this, consent item.
It might be warranted for us to go back and work with the departments to quantify need before we commit to a number like that.
Okay.
And I would just have one more question before I open up for public comment. Sorry. So with respect, right now, we're talking about Spanish, where I understand we have a need for that in our city. But what if, someone comes in and speaks Chinese, or, there are other languages? Would it make more sense to invest in technology that can translate multiple languages rather than, one person who might be able to translate one? And then we may have difficulty, if someone comes in speaking German or, Vietnamese, that we don't have someone available. So I'm just wondering, as we think about the costs, I definitely agree. I hear the human element of it. I do like that personal touch, and I think that really helps us service our community. But I do worry that we have capabilities in one language, but not necessarily in others. And how can we, come up with a solution for people who might speak different languages?
But I mean, if I could chime in, I think some of this comes from what the expectation is among our client base, right? So I do think some of our customers come in and are disappointed, visibly disappointed, that there isn't somebody to engage them in Spanish. I'm not familiar with anybody coming in speaking any other language with any real expectation that someone on our staff could engage them in that language. I think there's a level of just sort of practical analysis of what's needed here. And we do know from talking to our staff that they have regular engagement with people where Spanish is the native language, or Spanish is the language they're more comfortable speaking through the nuances of something in. But we could take this back, have more discussion, try to quantify it a little more, come back to you with a little more information. It's not an urgent need, and we do have technology in the meantime.
I agree. I appreciate that. Why don't I open it up for public? Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, let's open up for public comment. Mr. Holmes.
James Holmes, Larkspur. I too would ask you to consider whether the objectives of this proposal could be met efficiently and economically by using Google Translation. It works well. I know I've seen a PG&E arborist use it to direct a Spanish-speaking pruning crew. I know this is also used in classrooms. Second, if public safety imperatives require the ability to quickly give directions or get information in Spanish, then that should be addressed by the public safety JPAs. And I think it already is. I've seen a Central Marin police officer admonish in Spanish a neighbor's worker who was improperly in my yard. Given that the essential bases are or can be covered, I do question whether there's sufficient governmental need to further pursue bilingualism at taxpayer expense, especially here where the expressed concern is simply comfort, as the staff report refers to people, quote, more comfortable speaking in Spanish, unquote. Both a California initiative measure and federal action establish English as our official language, which suggests that at least for non-essential communications, the individual, not the city, should arrange for translations. And finally, please consider that the full impact, as has been noted, the full financial impact of this proposal is unknown and contingent, but could be several $1,000s a month and is also, quote, pensionable, end quote, as the staff report noted. So I would request that the council decline this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Anyone else with public comment on this item? See none. Do you want to see if anyone on Zoom has any public comment?
Looking for any raised hands from our Zoom audience members. There's no public comment.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'll bring it back to the council. How do we feel about Mr. Paulson's, Councilmember Paulson's idea to do a little more research into the number of positions and maybe have staff come back to us with a, potentially revised proposal? How do you feel about that?
That would be a good next step. I would also like us to investigate the use of technology and consider that as something to do in the interim while this research is being done, to see if we can set something up and see how that works and see if people are receptive to that and if that is helpful. And as a potential option of not moving in this direction.
I agree.
Okay, great. Do we have to make?
For
Oh,
some
yes.
additional direction, does the council have in mind what a good time frame for a pilot for, it sounds like we're on multiple paths, right? To see what the usage, quantify as much as we can, as well as experiment with technology. Again, I was reticent to institute a benefit for our staff and then take it away. I'm happy to put down an iPad and not pick it up again. So we can definitely pilot technology. I think anything less than 6 months isn't going to be useful. Was there something in folks' mind in terms of vision of when staff would report back to the council and the community on this?
I mean, I think you said it's not urgent, but if, kind of going off the city manager's, practical insights that like in the library, there seems to be a need, if there are a way to address it with technology, I would feel good about that. And to me, it was maybe more of a, I don't want staff to lose a lot of time, but if there's 2 or 3 departments and you need 2 or 3 people, just a number, like, we want to do this program with a cap, that's easier. It kind of contains it. And I completely agree with Councilmember Margulies. If we can, in the meantime, in the library, as soon as possible, set up something so people, feel a little better served, I think that'd be great.
So to me, Shannon, 6 months seems like the right time frame. Yes, to get data and to see how, using technology can serve our customer base.
And I'm sorry, I was thinking 3 months, but if 6 months is fine, maybe we can just get an update in 3 months, what's been done and just get a ballpark of where we are. That would be.
Also, why I wanted the 6 months is because we'll have different seasons. So particularly for the community service, well, actually all of the departments that we've identified, the counter has a busy season. There's still folks receiving services, but things slow down in the summer sometimes as folks go away. Piper Park, it's very busy in the summer. So I'd also want enough time to where the usage of the different departments, we can have like a decent set of.
Okay. 6 months it is.
We can provide a oral update or something appropriate on, particularly the pilot of using technology. That'll be pretty apparent if we're seeing progress or on a learning curve or something where we can provide a brief update.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can I just ask that we track how many times we do it in 6 months? And if it is only for Spanish, or if we find that we're using Translate for other languages as well?
We would track all use of it if there were.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Wonderful. Okay, so we have enough direction, so we'll move on to the next item, which is city manager's report.
I've got some event calendaring that I wanted to share with the council and the community, starting this Friday and on Saturday, in our annual collaboration with Corte Madera. We'll be doing egg hunts to celebrate the spring season with the community. In Larkspur on Friday, April 18, out in Piper Park, there'll be the flashlight hunt, and that's generally as dusk sets in. And then the next day, case you're preferring something in the daytime, there's a 10 a.m. in Town Park in Corte Madera. For the flashlight one, we do ask the children be a little older, so 8 and up is the recommended age. If you've ever seen this thing, it's pretty chaotic. It's a lot of fun. So, and you can go watch if you just want to enjoy the site. So that's the 18th and the 19th. There's information on the Recreation Department's website about it. You already heard from the Friends of the Library, but I want to reiterate that on May the 4th, they're having a fundraiser. They've done it in the past, very popular, called Touch Trucks. Gives families an opportunity to see a lot of different vehicles that are from construction, from public safety, get a chance to really understand how they work. And again, if you've ever gone to one of these and seen a young child sitting up in that seat pretending they're driving a dump truck, you know, it's pretty exciting stuff. So encourage folks to check that out in the Friends of the Library website and get more information. And then lastly, the Chamber of Commerce has a June 7 countywide battle of the dad bands that they'll be hosting at Piper Park from noon to 5 p.m. And you can go to the Larkspur Chamber of Commerce website to get more info about that. If you're typing into a search engine, make sure you say Larkspur, California Chamber of Commerce, because there's a Larkspur, Colorado, and folks get confused sometimes and end up on the wrong chamber website. There you go. Back to you, Madam Vice Mayor.
Great, thank you. All right, so we'll move to council members' oral reports. Does anyone have an update? All right.
None for me today.
Yeah, I'll go real quick. So I was at the SMART board meeting this afternoon, and perhaps most consequentially, the board has to put on the ballot extension of the quarter-cent sales tax, and SMART cannot continue to run or exist without that. And they need a 2/3 majority vote from the members of Marin and Sonoma counties. So there's, some discussion around that. And the good news is the ridership has reached 1 million a year, and there's also a very healthy bike path community, I think to the tune of 60, 70,000 people a month, walking, riding, using, and it's an alternative. But, there is some controversy. I joined the board representing Larkspur. We're really at the hub with the station here and all the connections, and, knowing that there's mixed feelings in the community. But basically, people who have ridden are twice as likely to support it as those who haven't. And I've really thought, it's worth getting people. So we still have seniors and youth are free, and I'm hoping they advertise that more. The other thing, just at a side note, they did try to solve the last mile a little bit with the Redwood Bike Share program. And I don't know if any of you have been on an e-bike. I have not. But if you go to the Lark Theater, across from the Lark Theater, you can pick up an e-bike and ride it wherever you want. And it's actually fairly economical, and it's meant to take you to the SMART station where you can drop it off. But anyway, so they're doing what they can to promote it, but much more to be revealed in the next year. We'll have to make some decisions by January. That's it for me.
Great, thank you. So is the tax on the ballot for 2026, November?
So the
Okay.
decision is March or November. We don't know which, given how crowded, and tax fatigue people are.
Great. Okay, so we'll move on to item 7, public hearings. Amending the fee schedule for the city of Larkspur.
I invite up Administrative Services Director Amelia Gabrielle, who introduced this item. And then after the staff report and presentation, you open a public hearing and we'll conduct this item.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Amelia Gabrielle, Administrative Services Director with the City of Larkspur. The agenda item is requesting your council to adopt the amended fee schedule as presented in your agenda packet, and this is for fiscal year 25-26. We have Clearwater, who is our consultant, was hired to prepare the amended fee schedule. And he is online on Zoom, so he's going to be joining us. Just as a quick summary, here is the increased fees. Basically, is 2.6%, which represents a regional consumer price index. So we'll have David joining us.
You should be good.
everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Good evening, Vice Mayor Andre and members of the City Council. Thank you for allowing me to be here to participate on this topic. My name is David Schroeder, and I'm here representing ClearSource Financial Consulting. We've been working with the city for a number of years, assisting staff with maintaining the city's master fee schedule. The item before you this evening is the annual update of the city's master fee schedule. This presentation will provide you with a brief overview of the update. The city maintains a schedule of user and regulatory fees charged in order to recover the costs associated with providing various services to the community. These services are performed by various city departments and include activities like building, planning, engineering, and a wide variety of other services. As part of its normal course of business, city staff performs an annual review and update of the city's master fee schedule. So why do we review and update these user and regulatory fees? Well, we do so for several reasons. Firstly, we want to make sure that we're in compliance with state laws. The legal mandate for fee setting purposes is that fees cannot exceed the estimated reasonable cost of providing a particular service. We also want to make sure that those who are benefiting directly from certain public services are the ones paying for that service. So say if you want to remodel your kitchen or want to put in a swimming pool, it wouldn't make sense to ask all of your neighbors to help pay for the cost of reviewing plans or having permit inspections done for those upgrades that are benefiting only you as an individual. Also, recovering the costs of these direct services also provides relief to limited general fund resources, so they can be better used for services that benefit the entire community. These are general city services like public safety, park and landscape maintenance, those types of things. And it also allows us to maintain and better meet service level expectations by allowing us to have adequate staffing and other resources that are necessary to provide these direct services to the community.
Sorry, I'm gonna interrupt real quick. I didn't know if you had a presentation with slides because you're not sharing your screen.
Oh, so sorry. I did. Hang on a sec. I'll back that up.
I had a feeling.
I apologize.
Sure.
1 second. Let's see. Are you seeing the presentation now?
Yes.
Excellent. So sorry. So again, going back, I won't repeat myself, but the city maintains a schedule of user and regulatory fees. And the reason we review these fees are to, adhere to legal requirements. It also encourages direct recovery of the costs, as I mentioned earlier. It provides relief to the general fund and helps the city maintain service level expectations by providing for funding for adequate staffing, those types of things. So I'll move on to the next one now. So most cities perform comprehensive fee studies about every 3 to 5 years or so. I believe the initial fee study, or the last time the city did a comprehensive fee study, was in 2017-18. And the city has done annual adjustments in the interim periods. Aside from that, it's also done sort of discrete fee studies for certain departments. I believe building had one a few years back, possibly planning, I think, had one too. But in general, in the interim periods, the city does annual inflationary adjustments. And that's what this update is. It's interim period annual inflationary adjustments. And as Amelia mentioned, the annual change in regional CPI is 2.6%, and that's what this adjustment represents. As a reminder, these updates are intended to offset the cost of providing direct services, specifically related to the fees being charged, not as an additional source of revenue, but to be used for some other purpose, but to just offset the cost of the specific services for which they're intended. And what staff is recommending is for the city council to adopt the resolution updating the city's master fee schedule for the 25-26 fiscal year and authorizing future annual inflationary adjustments. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm available to answer any questions or receive any feedback you may have.
Great, thank you very much. I'll open it up to the council for any questions.
I thought I heard, and I didn't see that in here, the authorization for annual adjustments. Is that written in here and I'm just missing it somehow? Because I know it's asking for this period, July 1, 2025 through June 30, 2026. But are we then going to authorize CPI annual increases annually?
When the council did the longer term review of the fee schedule, the decision was made that we'd bring you the annual CPI adjustment for consideration with any other adjustments that came out of perhaps a department level analysis. As was referenced a few years ago, we looked specifically at our community development divisions because we felt we had fallen behind in terms of our true cost and versus CPI. But generally, when we bring you something like this, we feel CPI is reflective of our own increased costs, and it's a reasonable approach to use. So you could anticipate that we'd be bringing this to you again next year, because we do bring this to you every year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else have questions? Okay, I have a couple of questions. One, how do our fees look? And I understand that this is not to, this is not a profit-making fee schedule is to recoup our costs. But how do our fees compare to our neighboring jurisdictions? Do you have any sense of that?
So we didn't commission that on this analysis
Oh,
for this
okay.
year. When we did that larger study,
Okay.
we did bring that as part of the analysis and felt that we were landing kind of roughly in the middle. I think it fluctuates periodically.
Okay.
Sometimes we're a little higher, sometimes we're a little lower than some of our neighbors, depending on when they've done their comprehensive analysis and their annual CPI adjustments. There's also some philosophical differences built into everybody's fee schedule. We used to capture every single nickel and dime. When we hired ClearSource, we did that massive study. One of the things they figured out was you're spending more general fund dollars on an employee's time to chase $100, right? You're spending like $2,000 of employee time to go find $100 in fee. And so we adjusted quite a bit of our fee schedule for some of our basic tasks to flat fixed amounts. And not every city's done that. So then it becomes harder to compare. That's been a big benefit both to us and the community because we're not spending huge amounts of time on really modest permits or really modest services to the community. They know up front they're going to pay this fixed fee, and no matter how long it takes, they're going to get what they need from the city. And so we felt that's been a win-win. Some of our neighbors use that approach, some don't. So
Okay.
it's hard to compare.
Right. I guess that leads to my second question is, and this may not be the appropriate time because I understand this is probably just the regular 2.5% CPI step up. So how can we do a review of our fees? So for instance, if we wanted to encourage electrification, or if we want to encourage, small business owners to open businesses, so we have less vacancy, like, how do we have like a review of our fees to see, where it might be possible to incentivize people towards green construction or incentivize people to open businesses?
Yeah. So you can't easily capture how much do we need to adjust our fees to incentivize because you'd have to know how much the private party is willing to pay and how much relief they need. The question, if you frame it the wrong way, presupposes that the fee is the barrier to starting the business, right? And I would generally, having done this a long time, say that's just not the case. That's not what stops somebody from launching a business. I think if what you want to focus on is what would cause somebody to pick choice A or B, for example, electrification, I think what you're asking us to do is to do a different type of analysis with it, where we would actually look at how much of a incentive could the city afford and is that reasonable and justified for a particular outcome that you want to realize. And in fact, I think when we bring you the budget, we've talked about some options to give you some money that may be available so that you could do that. The fee study has been carefully crafted to try to recover the costs. And it's the way Mr. Schrader was describing it. It's when the applicant is realizing a benefit that's really only appreciated by the applicant. The council's direction is we should recover our cost for providing that service. And so I think you want to probably leave the fee schedule structured that way because that's sort of a consistent policy. And then outside of it, look
Right.
at ways you could provide relief or some sort of incentive for outcomes that you want to incentivize. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. And then I guess I see Ms. Simonian in the audience there, but are there instances of where people are requesting waivers for the same type of permit or, fee waivers? And maybe we should look at that. I guess if there are instances like that, I think we should take a look at whether, we need to relook at the fees for that particular item.
Yeah, so your staff only has the ability to waive some very specific fees, and it's very limited, and it's to very limited groups, and it's policy choices you've made.
Right.
So for example, the code specifically empowers the Public Works Director to waive an encroachment permit to certain nonprofits for certain types of events. One of them that just came up is the bike to work activity. That the code specifically says that if there's a nonprofit promoting something like that, he can waive that fee. But most waivers have to come to you. So if we were hearing a lot of requests, you'd be hearing a lot
see.
of requests.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Great. Perfect. All right. Thank you. So since this is a public hearing, should I open up for public comment? If anybody has any in the public who would like to comment on this item?
if you want to feel really official, you can tap the gavel and say you've opened the public hearing.
Oh. I'll open the public hearing to the public. Would anybody like to comment here in the chambers? Mr. Holmes.
James Holmes, yes, I'd like to just draw attention to one particular fee, and that is the encroachment fee. I encountered it recently when I had 2 or 3 limbs taken off my tree, and an encroachment fee was levied for the tree people just to park in an empty parking space for an hour. And there didn't seem to be any services really issued in connection or performed in connection with that. And I'm not sure how the general application of the encroachment fee jibes with the idea of encouraging direct recovery of costs incurred to serve private interests, because there weren't really any services rendered in connection with that. And of course, there's the encroachment fee can cover a wide variety of things. And I mean, sometimes there's traffic control and everything else, but just taking up a parking place for an hour on the street, no differently from anything else, it seemed a little bit onerous. And so I do think some consideration should be given, perhaps in the administration of the encroachment fees, to situations where there is indeed a no service situation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Does anyone from staff want to respond or provide additional information?
If you'd like, why don't you do the entirety of the public hearing and then we'll respond.
Okay, great. Allison, do you want to see if anybody online wants to comment?
Looking for any raised hands from our Zoom audience members. And there's no public comment.
Okay, great. So Mr. City Manager?
I don't know the specifics of Mr. Holmes' case to the detail, but generally encroachment permit is a request for essentially a licensed amount of time to use public space that either 1, impacts the public space physically, or 2, denies the general public access to the space for the period that it's being used. So in the case, the way he's describing it, I think probably an encroachment permit was necessary because large vehicles were being parked in public space for an extended period of time, so the public doesn't have access to that public space during that time.
Can I ask if the public is charged a fee that they feel is inappropriate? Is there an appeal process for that, or is it just, it is what it is?
There's an appeal process in your code for all decisions.
Okay.
So, yes.
I had a feeling, I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, great. All right, so since this is a public hearing, do you need us to pass this resolution or approve the resolution?
So first you should formally close the public
Oh,
hearing.
okay.
So you just need to say you're doing that, or
Great.
again, if you want to tap that gavel for the official sound.
I officially close the public hearing.
So now that that's closed, then you can ask council for members if they have any
Great.
final comments and then take a vote.
Okay, great. So I'll bring it back to council. Anybody have any comments? Okay. Does someone want to move to approve Resolution 1625?
I will move to approve 1625.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? No? Okay. Resolution passes. All right, so now we move to business item 8.1, consideration of whether to terminate membership in the California Community Housing Authority. I'll turn it over to Mr. City Manager to see if he wants to give a report, and then I also have some comments.
I know that the ad hoc committee, through the vice mayor, is going to do a bit of a presentation and make some comments, but I thought I'd highlight some key bits of information that are provided in the written report for the benefit of the public. So to begin with, there's a web link in the written report that takes you to a web page that we've created that has the various materials that the council's been provided over the past year as you've explored this issue and your ad hoc committee has explored this issue. We've incorporated all those materials by reference into the staff report because they're all germane to the discussion that you're having. And so folks are encouraged, if you hear reference to something that isn't specifically in the staff report, it's probably one of the earlier materials. We'll try our best to identify them as we're going through this conversation. Secondly, I just want to remind folks of a general timeline of how we reached where we are today. The City of Larkspur is what's called a non-charter additional member of a joint powers authority called the California Community Housing Authority. The city joined in 2019 at the very end of the calendar year, 2019. CalCHA promotes a program that it identifies as providing essential housing. And as is discussed in the staff report, essential housing is for them a program that targets middle-income renters. And I think the ad hoc committee will speak a little bit more to middle-income renters and the benefits. Generally, though, I can say on behalf of the council from 2019, there was considerable interest at that time in expanding the city's offerings in affordable housing. This was presented as a very novel approach to trying to increase the affordable housing stock, and the council decided to support the program going forward. One of the challenges with the joining CalCHA is at the time you don't know what property may or may not be acquired. There is provisions in the way it's structured so that eventually CalCHA, should they decide to purchase a property in one of their member agency jurisdictions, would then get documents completed with the city that were done at the executive level because the council had transferred that authority to the executive level. That was done in 2020, and CalCHA acquired a property in Larkspur Landing called Serenity. And after that, we certainly had a distraction for a few years, but coming out of it, there began to be some public focus on issues with Serenity, and members of the public and members of the council in 2024 started to have some questions about the performance of the affordable housing program at Serenity, as well as the general fiscal health of the property within the context of the CalCHA model. And I think the ad hoc committee will speak more about that. As a result of that concern, an ad hoc committee was formed by the council in May of last year and charged with doing exploration to look at all these issues, particularly the ones being raised by the public. In November 24, the ad hoc committee issued a report. That report is on the city's website, as I indicated, and the 4 key summarized conclusions of that report are in the written staff report for tonight as well as in that previous material. We encourage everyone to review them. But generally, I would say the ad hoc committee found reason, substantiated the reasons behind the concern they were hearing about the performance of the program, as well as the fiscal health of the property and the long-term model applied by CalCHA to Serenity. The ad hoc committee's work didn't end. They continued to engage stakeholders, including representatives from the bondholder community. And during the course of all of this, CalCHA elected to change the actual project manager at Serenity. And I know the ad hoc committee opportunity to engage with the incoming project administrator. What's come to light in addition that I know staff has spoken quite a bit with the ad hoc committee about is our engagement with CalCHA has really highlighted that most of the decision-making and the day-to-day operation of this organization is deferred to these project administrators at the sites. There's not really what I would consider a traditional or standard government agency with which the city can engage. And so that membership standing doesn't really translate into any real way to effectuate decision-making or change within CalCHA. And I think that's a really important point as the ad hoc committee makes its report, because it underlines some general concerns and that staff and I think the ad hoc committee shares about confidence in how this would be managed as a government project moving forward as it tries to right its ship. I'm going to defer to the ad hoc committee to speak to some of the specifics in the report. I think from communication with Vice Mayor Andre, she would like to go over some of the more substantive findings of the ad hoc committee before you take public comment. So I'm going to turn over to you, Madam Vice Mayor.
Great. Thank you. The staff report was well written, so thank you very much and provided a really nice summary. I am just going to go over briefly the position of the ad hoc committee and our recommendation tonight. As Mr. Schwartz said, there's a lot of information online. We published a report in November 2024. So if this is your first time joining us, please go back and look at some of those materials. So the Larkspur City Council elected to join the California Community Housing Authority, otherwise known as CalCHA, in 2019 to provide affordable housing to middle-income renters. And that is defined as those earning between 80% and 120% of area median income. In 2019, CalCHA was the first JPA of this type in California, and Serenity was its third acquisition in February of 2020. The ad hoc committee was formed in May 2024 to examine the performance of Serenity and to assess the costs and the benefits of the essential housing program. And based on our findings, the committee is recommending that the City of Larkspur withdraw from the CalCHA Joint Powers Authority. As written in our report, dated November 2024, on the city's website, the ad hoc committee has found, and if you could go to the first slide, 1, little to no benefits for income qualified tenants. Serenity has not met its goal of providing significant rent benefits to middle-income renters. After 5 years, the property is only 59% leased to middle-income renters. And when we compared housing benefits, income qualified renters were found to be paying higher average rents than non-income qualified renters, which is contrary to the goals of the City of Larkspur. So on the graph on the screen, you can see, and this is data, average rent data that we received from CalCHA as of June 12th, 2024. You can see the orange bar showing the average rents that non-program tenants are paying, and the blue bars are the average rents of tenants, income qualified tenants who are in the essential housing program. So this data was given to us, and we have made multiple requests for additional insight into this data, as well as the raw data to explain what is happening here, and we have not received the additional information. Secondly, next slide, please. Taxpayers are providing a $3 million annual subsidy. Taxpayers of Larkspur, Marin County, and other local agencies are subsidizing the essential housing program at Serenity by foregoing approximately $3 million a year in property taxes. On a cumulative basis, over the last 5 years, taxpayers have foregone approximately $14 million in taxes. And you can see from the chart on the screen, these numbers were calculated and given to us by the Marin County Department of Finance. It includes the basic ad valorem tax, but also the taxes for other government agencies and bonds. And thirdly, next slide, please. Approximately $7 million in fees have been paid to Serenity backers. So CalCHA, GPM advisors, and Catalyst have earned approximately $7 million in fees over the last 5 years, despite not meeting the goals of the essential housing program and allowing the property to slide into default. So you can see these are the fees that we were able to gather from public filings. I don't believe that the table is not comprehensive. There may be other fees that have been paid to CalCHA and GPM advisors at the time of the bond offering, but we don't have access to information. So the numbers on the table are what we've been able to gather. Again, these findings were detailed in the November 2024 Ad Hoc Committee report. Despite multiple requests, we have not received any new information that changes the fundamental analysis laid out in that report. And indeed, many of our information requests remain unanswered. We have found communication with the CalCHA board and its oversight of the JPA to be insufficient. The Kings County Board of Supervisors is the board of CalCHA, yet not a single one of the 14 properties owned by CalCHA is located in Kings County. It appears that the Kings County Board of Supervisors has delegated its duties and powers to GPM municipal advisors. GPM is a municipal advisory firm based in Walnut Creek and registered with the SEC to provide, quote, advice concerning the issuance of municipal securities, and 2, solicitation of investment advisory business from a municipal entity. They appear to be bond brokers receiving fees through bond issuances and lacking any expertise that qualifies them to be overseers of an affordable housing program. GPM Municipal Advisors was a wholly owned subsidiary of another municipal advisory firm called HB Capital Resources. HB Capital Resources is also based in Walnut Creek and created the California Statewide Communities Development Authority, otherwise known as CSCDA. CSCDA has financed essential housing projects similar to Serenity in Southern California, and some of their properties are being administered by Waterford. So what would appear to be independent JPAs financing and operating essential housing projects throughout California, these are all actually offshoots of the same taproot. The Ad Hoc Committee has tried to meet with GPM both in person and via Zoom, and both times GPM has canceled our meetings and requested that we send our questions in writing. The Ad Hoc Committee feels that the CalCHA JPA has too many layers, where fees are paid to boards and external advisors who are not fulfilling their duties. We no longer see value in our membership in CalCHA and are recommending withdrawal from the CalCHA JPA effective immediately. Since last November, the Ad Hoc Committee has continued to meet with key stakeholders, including representatives of the bondholders and Waterford. Since Serenity is in default and appears to be possibly headed to some form of debt restructuring, the bondholders are driving the process with respect to a potential solution. In March, the bondholders removed Catalyst and brought in Waterford as a project administrator at Serenity. Both the bondholders and Waterford have signaled a desire to pursue a solution that is mutually agreeable to the city. And while we are open to exploring potential solutions, we're also cautious, noting the interconnected relationships among these parties. Since the publishing of our resolution to withdraw from CalCHA, representatives of Waterford, GPM advisors, and the bondholder group have reached out to the Ad Hoc Committee, asking us to postpone the vote on withdrawal for 30 days in order to allow them time to present us with a restructuring plan. The Ad Hoc Committee has deliberated and finds that it is in the best interest of the city of Larkspur to withdraw from the JPA. Withdrawing from CalCHA doesn't preclude us from continuing discussions with parties involved in Serenity. Withdrawing from CalCHA removes the city of Larkspur from membership in an organization that we feel has not served the best interests of the residents of Larkspur. In addition, it opens up the opportunity for the Marin County Assessor's Office to determine whether Serenity should remain exempt from property taxes. Our analysis shows that a significant portion of taxpayer dollars have been used to pay fees to expensive external advisors rather than benefiting middle-income renters. Serenity is one of the most valuable parcels of real estate in Larkspur. The $14 million tax loss annually is the $14 million tax loss annually to local governments and school districts has led to local property owners subsidizing this project for over 5 years. We don't believe that the $3 million annual subsidy should continue. The ad hoc committee supports affordable housing, and we believe council should continue to look for other ways to create better housing options in Larkspur for a range of incomes. This project has not fulfilled its goals, and the committee recommends withdrawal from the CalCHA JPA. Our recommendation to withdraw is based on the serious concerns that we have regarding this particular JPA structure that CalCHA is operating. The cost to taxpayers, its failure to deliver affordable housing at the level the City Council hoped for when it agreed to join CalCHA, and a failure of the CalCHA's board and its advisors to act on behalf of its member agencies to enforce the JPA's primary goal of delivering affordable housing to middle-income tenants. That concludes our remarks, and I'll open it up for any questions.
Well, first, I wanted to thank the ad hoc committee. We've had lots of meetings, and I feel that there's been a really thorough, reasoned research process. And again, thank you both for doing that. Just a couple questions about next steps. So if we do withdraw, I guess there's the possibility that the Marin assessor would take away the tax exempt status. And would that imply that Larkspur would now have an additional 1 million or 3 million? I don't know what the exact amount is because it's going to different agencies, but what would the possible financial impact be to the city? And is there any sense of the probabilities?
Great question. So the estimation would be that the city of Larkspur, if this property came back on the tax rolls, we would realize approximately $500,000 annually in property taxes. I can't guess as to probabilities in terms of what the assessor might do, but at least opens up the opportunity for her to assess the situation.
And some of the tax would go to County Marin, to Larkspur, Corte Madera school districts, or whoever is.
That would be on top of the 500. Yeah, so it's 3 million per year, 500 directly to us.
Correct.
A portion to the county, a portion to the
So
schools.
this is, the entire agency, system here. Okay, understood. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Sky. you were
I'm
making a
just
comment.
going to say that add on to those responses to say that once the city notifies the assessor's office, the assessor will engage in her own process to make a determination on the advice of her own counsel about whether or not the property becomes subject to property tax as a result of the city's withdrawal from the JPA. There are a number of complicating factors, including that the county is also a member of the JPA, which you're likely to hear from members of the public. So the assessor will have to make her own determination. That is subject to both litigation and potentially an administrative appeal process. We may not know the final outcome for some period of time, but the withdrawal would initiate the opportunity to engage in that review, and then the process will play itself out.
And so, sorry, the County of Marin is also a member and would have to withdraw for this to, so that's the West Marin district, I believe. So it's, the county supervisor for that area is Redoni, but it's City of Larkspur for the council.
So I would just say that it is not necessarily the case that the county would have to withdraw. This is an unadjudicated legal issue. There are multiple opinions about it. And that's why I'm trying to emphasize that the assessor is going to have to make her own determination, and then there may well be challenges to that at different levels, because the question has not been finally adjudicated by a court at this point. One view is that the county would also have to withdraw. Another view is that the county's participation is for the unincorporated area only, and that the city's withdrawal from the JPA is sufficient to alter the basis for the exemption as it currently exists.
And I'm sorry, let me just add that to clarify, and Sky, tell me if I got this wrong, is there's a separate property in the county that the county joined for that property. So the question is, this property is in the city of Larkspur. So if we withdraw and this property is in the city of Larkspur and they're still a member of CalCHA for this other property, how would that affect the outcome? I think that's the question.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I just had one question about the repercussions of withdrawing from CalCHA. Are there any legal pursuits that they can take against us for withdrawing from the JPA?
I'm going to chuckle and look at Councilmember Candell and say that parties can bring litigation on pretty much any basis to take a shot at it. My personal view, after having reviewed the situation fairly extensively over the course of the last year or so, is that the city retains discretion to withdraw from the JPA, and there's really no actionable basis to sue the city over that. But there may well be significant consequences for a series of financial and contractual relationships that where this is the first domino to fall, and there may be parties who are negatively financially affected, who want to make the city a party to resolution of that. But I believe that the city is in a very strong position in that regard. Additionally, one of the things that former planning director Neil Toft and I with Dan negotiated at the time that the city was entering into the JPA was an indemnity and defense agreement with CalCHA. And so some forms of litigation that could be filed against the city, we would tender to CalCHA, and we would have also a strong argument that they would be obligated contractually to provide the city with a defense. The terms of the indemnity and defense agreement were not contingent upon the city remaining a member of the JPA.
Great. Well, and I am so sorry. I was remiss to thank Councilmember Candell, who throughout this process and on the ad hoc committee, I mean, we have spent numerous hours digging through documents, meeting with key stakeholders, thinking about the entire situation to get to this point. So, and I am grateful for the advice also of city manager and the city attorney. I think, this has been almost a years long process. And I really appreciate everyone's insight and expertise. So thank you.
And can I just echo that? Thank you both for all your hard work and research and the thorough investigation with the materials that you have and providing us with such a great report and all of the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, I'll open it up to public comments. Yes, please. Do I have to do this? Oh, okay. All right. I will open public comments.
Vice Mayor and City Council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Alicia Muller and I'm with Waterford Property Company, also referred to as Waterford. Before I begin my remarks, I want to clarify that I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Joint Powers Authority, CalCHA, on this item. CalCHA will be entering their own statement into the record this evening. I also want to state that Waterford is not a registered municipal advisor and is not advising the city as a financial advisor. Waterford is an affordable housing developer and investor with over $3 billion of assets under management. Waterford prides itself on its ability to work with public partners to deliver impactful, affordable, and workforce housing solutions. Waterford has over 30 public-private partnerships with local governments throughout the state of California. On March 21st, 2025, Waterford was hired as the project administrator of Serenity at Larkspur by CalCHA at the recommendation of the bond investors on the project. Immediately upon being hired, Waterford sent an email to Councilmember Andre, the city manager, and the city attorney, alerting them of the change in project administrators at the property. A portion of the March 21st email reads as follows. As part of our commitment to transparency and operational excellence, we are undertaking a comprehensive transition process to ensure continuity and the long-term stability of the property. We are conducting full due diligence, engaging qualified third-party consultants to assess the property, and compiling detailed reports to establish a thorough understanding of the current condition of Serenity. Additionally, Wilmington Trust, on behalf of the bondholders of Serenity, have engaged FTI Consulting to facilitate a likely restructuring of the bond indenture. We are working in close coordination with their team to ensure the accuracy of financial reporting and to provide the necessary data to support the asset's financial stability post-restructure. Over the next 30 to 60 days, Waterford will be developing both an operational budget and a capital budget to guide our strategic approach. Our team is fully dedicated to addressing both the physical and operational aspects of Serenity. Preliminary assessments have indicated the need for additional testing and surveying, and we have engaged third-party specialists to conduct these evaluations. Upon receipt of the final reports, we will provide the ad hoc committee with a detailed breakdown of the physical and operational deficiencies that led to the issues at Serenity. Additionally, in partnership with Greystar Construction, we will develop a comprehensive financial and operational strategy to ensure the property's long-term viability and performance moving forward. As I stand here before you tonight, I'm here to state on behalf of Waterford, we did not cause the issues at the property, but we were hired because of our expertise in affordable housing operations to fix them. As mentioned in our email, we are working with the bondholders, CalCHA, and the trustee to put a turnaround restructuring plan in place that will benefit the residents of the project and the city of Larkspur. Our goal is to present something to the city within the next 30 days. Tonight, our ask is that the city delay in taking any action on this agenda item until it reviews a comprehensive restructuring plan put forth by CalCHA and the bond investors. On behalf of Waterford and myself, we thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Alicia. Anyone else in the public who wants to comment? Mr. Holmes.
James Holmes Larkspur. The city's membership in this organization seems to sort of fall within the category of it seemed like a good idea at the time. It doesn't now. I'd like to point out that the ad hoc committee is not the only one with concerns or has expressed opinions about this. I remember reading several articles in the mainstream financial press. I want to say Forbes, but maybe it was another one, that also criticized the high fees and other aspects of this. So that this mainstream commentary has not been favorable to this. I think that one of the particular concerns in favor of getting out of this is what I read in the report, that they could do this, if we don't get out of this, they could do this all over again with another entity. I think this whole thing borders on scandal, and the city is very wise to walk away from it quickly. Of particular concern, I think, is the almost being blown off by the Kings County Board. That is very unpalatable and is another reason, I think, to back off. And finally, I think this is an example of a public-private partnership where all the benefit has gone to the private people who were paid upfront and continue to be paid upfront, and all of the and the benefit, there's been negligible benefit to the public. And in fact, the result is just the reverse of what was advertised. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Mr. Horton.
Hi, I'm Ted Horton, 14 Willow Avenue. Lived here in Larkspur since 1995, and I've done a fair bit of apartment investment and development. I had a few comments on this 5-year experiment. The property's defaulted on its bonds. It's never met its required debt service coverage ratio and triggered a covenant default. The property administrator that was terminated in March owes over $5 million in back taxes. They've been sent tax bills. The recap plan that they submitted last summer wanted to put $30 million in additional bond debt on top of the $220 million of existing debt that they can't pay. The existing debt was serviced over the past 5 years by plundering reserve accounts that had been set up. And now these reserve accounts are exhausted. Now the project, the last time I looked at the numbers, looked like it was going to run out of cash to pay its debt this year. And so it would trigger a payment default in addition to a covenant default. The deferred repair requirements that were initially that you covered in your ad hoc committee report, when they bought it, they said, oh, it's about $1 million ought to cover us over the next 15 years. Last year, they said it was $21 million. So, Waterford's looking into that. They've got the consultants that'll come up with a check on those numbers. But it's, when you have foregone 15 million or 14 million in tax revenues over the 5 years of this experiment, and the benefit, the way it looks like the rent subsidies have totaled a little less than $1 million a year. So let's call it 5 million. That's $9 million in tax revenue that's been foregone. The project was poorly conceived, poorly planned and budgeted, and poorly executed. And as a result, your proposal makes perfect sense to end the city's membership with the CalCHA JPA. Because when you find yourself in a $10 million hole, it's time to stop digging and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment in the chambers? Okay. Should we see if there's any comments online?
Looking for any raised hands from the Zoom audience, and the first speaker, you may unmute yourself now.
Ms. Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Colleen Murphy. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm an attorney at Greenberg Traurig, and I represent Wilmington Trust National Association, who is the trustee for the holders of the Serenity at Larkspur bonds. As the council knows, in 2020, CalCHA issued over $220 million in bonds to fund the acquisition of the Serenity at Larkspur project. And I was going to make an impassioned plea as to why the city should stay in the JPA. But I hear you. I think we all hear you. And I have to say, we respect your decision. As the city has been, we too have been frustrated with the way that this project has progressed with the defaults. And we tried, as I think members of the subcommittee or the ad hoc committee know, we did try to engage, and we did try to see whether or not we could help the city get over some of the issues with communication that you all have suffered through. So, at this point, I just want to say that we are as frustrated as you guys are. The bondholders have $220 million at risk here. And we do, though, continue to think that there is a solution. We would like to continue to work with you, and we greatly appreciate your expressed willingness to consider discussions. Again, I had more to say, but I think at this point it sounds clear the direction that you're heading in. And I would just like to say that we really would appreciate further discussions on behalf of the trustee and the bondholders. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Anyone else online?
Looking for any additional raised hands from our Zoom audience members? And there's no public comment.
Great. So I'll close public comment and, sorry, one more? Oh, yes. Okay, one more. Sorry.
Yes, I'll unmute caller ending in 8525. And I'll ask you to unmute.
Caller and with phone number ending 8525, you have the floor. If you could unmute yourself.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Yeah, sorry about that. So this is Scott Carper. I'm the program administrator with CalCHA. And I just also wanted to reiterate, we were hopeful that there could be a potential delay in vote for 30 days so we could bring our plan forward to you guys. I agree with Colleen Murphy that it sounds like, most likely the decision has been made, but we're still hopeful, still want to work with you guys. We are excited with Waterford coming on board with some fresh new ideas and a restructuring plan with the bondholders, and at least wanted to have an opportunity to present that to you guys over the next couple of weeks before you made your decision. But just wanted to say we're still committed to this. We understand you're frustrated, and we apologize for that. And we still want to try to turn this thing around. So we were just hoping that at least a couple more weeks to present that. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your comments. And if there's one more public comment in the chambers. Yes, Mr. Gilardi.
Dennis Gilardi, Larkspur. I'd like to reinforce one of the things that Ted mentioned about the offering circular. When it was issued, it was very clear that the project was in very good shape. And the amount of money that is going in for maintenance was negligible to the size of the deal. The project was purchased in the first part of January or so of 2020. The deal was in place when this city joined the JPA. The bond offering circular was in red herring station at the end by December, which stated that the property was in very good shape. To come back now and to say, whoa, we have this $20 million worth of problems, which will be verified by the new operators, is all red herring. I encourage you to withdraw. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilardi. Are there any other public comments, both in the chamber or online? Okay, with that, I'll close public comments and I will bring it back here. I do want to ask a question to the city attorney just to clarify, given some of the comments online. Withdrawing does not preclude us from continuing to talk to the other parties that are involved in Serenity, correct?
That's correct. I'd add that of course, it would require approval from CalCHA, but if council was ultimately convinced that there was a pathway forward and that rejoining the JPA would add value to the success of the project, the council could take that step as well. But withdrawal does not prevent you from continuing to engage with the trustee, CalCHA, Waterford to understand the turnaround plan, how, if they can plan to continue the essential housing program, how they intend to enhance that to bring more members into it, increase the levels of affordability. The council can and staff can continue to engage in those discussions.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Comments and questions, I guess. I just want to share my experience. The in my opinion, the way that this project has been managed is unacceptable. I would like to withdraw, and I have no interest in rejoining CalCHA because it was just a disaster. I have only positive things to say about Waterford. They came in very late in the game, and they were very straightforward, and I have no hard feelings. I have no hard feelings with the bondholders. You know, they made an investment and they're interested in trying to work something out. I would be interested in continuing conversations. I'd be interested in hearing proposals of how we could make this work. I think we're all still interested in affordable housing, you know, and finding out a solution to help people, you know, in that moderate income area be able to have benefits and work something that's in everybody's best interest. This partnership, the CalCHA model, is not in everybody's best interest. So I guess my question, which, you know, I know we've talked about a little bit, but maybe if it's appropriate to ask, so everyone is on the same page. The question is it possible if we get proposals from some of the parties, we don't want to rejoin CalCHA, but we're interested in doing something without CalCHA and doing something either directly with these parties or with, you know, through the county or through a nonprofit, you know, is there a reason we wouldn't be able to do that if an offer was presented to us that made sense to us?
Legally, I can't think of a reason now. I will, you know, say that information may come to light that would present a basis to conclude that there are obstacles to the city proceeding down those pathways. But hypothetically, if there was another form of organizing, a similar arrangement that would not involve CalCHA, but it would involve a nonprofit or the county, other parties that would achieve the council's goals for affordable housing, I don't see any legal obstacles to doing that.
Okay. Thank you. And I don't have any other questions or comments.
Yeah, this subsequent discussion has been most helpful. So just for completeness here, I guess we can withdraw and we could rejoin, we could withdraw and seek other means to work with the bondholders and potentially companies like Waterford. Just from the ad hoc's perspective, is the loss of faith so great that waiting for 30 days for report? I mean, what could a possible, is there any possible message, news, or information that might sway you guys? Because, I'm looking to you as people who've thoroughly researched this.
And I can't talk for Vice Mayor Andre. For myself, I have no interest in pursuing a partnership or a CalCHA type partnership after this experience. Just the lack of transparency, the amount of difficulty it is to get information that we should be entitled to. I don't want to do that again, right? I am interested in working with the other parties. And yes, if something changed and we want to rejoin CalCHA, there's nothing saying we can't. But from my perspective, I cannot imagine what would be presented within 30 days that would make me want to get back into the situation that we're in right now.
I agree with Councilmember Kendall. And, and I think if we push this out 30 days, we're going to get a proposal, then we're going to have to evaluate. I mean, the timeline continues to drag on. I think, the main issue here that we're having is we are part of a JPA where we don't have a board seat. We are not in the decision-making process. We have no communication with the board of supervisors. They seem to be in absentia. We have no idea what they know of the situation, if anything. We see no value in being part of a JPA that isn't really acting on our behalf as they're supposed to be. So I would recommend withdrawal, and if we, I would be interested in seeing the proposals and continuing those discussions. I do also think that those discussions, it's going to take time to put together a proposal. So, we could continue this, we could keep postponing this, indefinitely. So I think the time, I think Councilmember Kendall, and I feel like it's time. It's just, we've tried to get information. It's not working. Very little has changed. I didn't put this in the report, but I have gone back and looked at the financial statements. What has changed since last June versus now? Very little has changed in terms of the operating and the financial metrics. It's pretty much, they're just doing the same thing. And, no change in behavior, no change in rental strategy. Our concerns, despite our concerns, they haven't taken any action. So that's the way that's how we've come to this point.
And I'm sorry, just to add to that, again, just my opinion, I look forward to getting a proposal in 30 days. That, in my experience, is going to be the first step of a much larger process, negotiation, whatever it is, to get to, if we are able to work something out, it's not going to be they present something in 30 days. We're like, hey, good, we're done. So I don't see us being in any better place 30 days from now than we are now.
Thank you.
My only comment is, I would like to see a proposal. I would like to have those conversations. I am still committed to trying to find paths to affordable housing in this community, and it's something we need to do. But to Vice Mayor Andre's point, I don't see any reason to remain a member of the JPA that hasn't provided us any value, any transparency, any communication channel, and we don't have a seat on the board. So I'm ready to make a decision tonight.
Great. All right, so can I get a motion then to move item 8.1? Or actually, what is the resolution? Okay, resolution 1725.
I would make a motion to pass resolution 1725.
Then I'll second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, the resolution passes. Okay, great. All right, so now we are going to move on to item 8.2, the city financial outlook.
I'm going to ask Administrative Services Director Amelia Gabrielle to join me up here. She'll actually be doing the bulk of this presentation because she's the real brains behind our financial world. But as she gets set up, I thought I'd make some opening remarks. When we start our budget process, we try as part of that to give you a general perspective on what we see for the city now, where we see trends going. We look at a 3 and 5 year sort of outlook of what things are going to be. And of course, the farther we go out, the more we're working on some pretty basic assumptions. And so tonight we thought we'd really work with you to show you sort of what we're assuming and what we're seeing. When you're doing a financial outlook, I often say if you're doing it correctly, you have a good, a bad, and an ugly component of the story. So for this particular outlook, I'll give you a little preview. The good news is your staff worked really hard. All the department has worked very hard with Ms. Gabrielle, and she has been working nonstop for several weeks to try to find ways to bring you as balanced a budget as possible. We still are working to refine it, see if we can close a few more gaps. There are some challenges you're going to hear a little bit about tonight, and then you're going to hear quite a bit about in your 2 sessions in May as we sort of really dive into the minutia of this year's budget. But But that's the good. We've been working very hard for several weeks and we've made a lot of progress. The bad. The bad is that independent of a lot of things that are going on in the world right now, we have some negative trends. We have rising costs of doing business and we have softening revenue streams. So that was sort of the picture we were working with. And then January came along and the picture at the federal level changed a lot. And so the ugly is you can bet that as consumer confidence is going like this nationally, it has an impact even in Larkspur and on our revenue streams. And so the real ugly here is the amount of volatility that you're seeing nationally has an effect on us, just like it has an effect on the outlooks of everyone's business and personal finances. So that's going to be part of our story tonight. And in fact, I'm going to just say one thing right now that I've talked with Ms. Gabrielle about. Given that I don't think I can remember, I know I cannot remember in my career feeling this uncomfortable, this uncertain about how national trends will affect our budget. I think we're going to have to come to you every other month in this coming fiscal year with a just report, are our assumptions correct or do they need to be adjusted? Because I think we're going to just keep seeing these trends causing us to rethink some of what we're doing. So with that, before I turn it over to Amelia to take you through numbers and assumptions, some broad themes that you'll hear about from us today and that are driving a lot of our thought process. As I just put a heavy emphasis on, this is a post-election year, and there's a lot of changes in federal policies that are trickling down to us. They are affecting consumer and investor confidence, which can hit us as people decide not to spend money. And then generally, we're worried that if we start to see more inflation, unemployment, and shifts in monetary policy, that'll also have an effect on the city. So we're dealing with all that economic uncertainty. And then some local impacts that we're also wrestling with. We continue to feel pressure on our operating costs. You see a lot going on in the business world and in the business publications. Local business is feeling that too. The cost of doing business here is going up. It's everything our payroll, which we're dealing with inflationary pressures of the past few years that hit our payroll, to now we have to worry about material costs, just like any business that does infrastructure. The local impacts of economic uncertainty on our local economy is our sales tax revenue could soften further. We might see a slowing of people's investment in their property. So there's just as we go through all of this, again, we're going to tell you what our assumptions are on April 16, 2025, and we just may have to have different assumptions a few months from now. So that's the challenge that we're walking through, but we're going to take you now through. Amelia's going to walk you through some of the information we have for you this evening, some of the assumptions we're building the budget around. And again, at the end, we'll talk about what our timeline is for the remainder of the budgetary process. And as we go along, please stop us if you have questions on particular slides.
Thank you for the overview. I'm just going to begin with a quick introduction before I get into the numbers. So the goal of this presentation is to provide your council with an update on the financial outlook of the city of Larkspur for the general fund. The outlook includes a projection of the general fund revenue and expenditure for the next 5 years, beginning with fiscal year 25-26 all the way up to 29-30, fiscal year 29-30. So we're in the beginning of our budgeting process, annual budgeting process, I should say. The budget data you will see today or tonight for fiscal year 25-26 is still based on preliminary estimates that will be finalized as we enter the upcoming budget sessions at the City Council meetings on May 7th and May 21st and lead to the adoption of the city's budget at the City Council meeting on June 4th. So I'm going to go to next slide. So I wanted to start by showing you a snapshot of the projected general fund revenue for fiscal year 25-26. Starting with our property tax revenue, it is estimated at $16.5 million, or about 66% of the total general fund revenue. The next largest share of the general fund revenue is the sales tax, estimated at 3.1 million or 12% of the total general fund revenue. This is followed by other taxes at 1.5 million or 6% of the total revenue. Other taxes include the transient occupancy tax, also known as the TOT, which is about 900,000 of the 1.5 million. There's also business license tax of about 435,000 in this total number, and property transfer tax of 150,000. Next, on the chart, you'll see charges for services estimated at 1.6 million or 6% of the total revenue. Charges for services include fee for services for plan check, planning, encroachment permit, recreation fees, fiscal services provided to outside entities such as CMPA and RVPA. The next item on this pie chart is the franchise fee, estimated at 1.1 million or 5% of the total revenue. The composition of the franchise fee revenue includes fees paid by PG&E, cable, AT&T, and garbage franchise fee. The next item on this slide is a license and permits revenue, estimated at 912,000 or 4% of total revenue. The licenses and permit includes building permits, which represents most of the revenue at $885,000. It includes residential inspection and tobacco licenses. Other revenues projected at 200,000, of which 175,000 is a one-time grant revenue from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. And we also have penalties and fines estimated at $60,000, and mainly it consists of vehicles fines. And finally, we have the use of property estimated at 55,000, which represents the anticipated interest earned on the non-reserved general fund cash balance for fiscal year 25-26. The total revenue on this chart is about $25.1 million, and it does not include transfer in of special funds in the amount of $780,000. Those transfer ins are made up of gas tax, Measure B, and Measure G. So are there any questions before I go to the next slide, which will be a breakdown of how I arrived to those assumptions?
I have a couple quick questions, Amelia. Thank you for this. I'm very detailed. So are any of the revenue numbers shown here, are they passed through? Because you said charges for services included CMPA and like the fire. So are those revenues that we keep, or are those passed through?
Charges for services are fiscal services provided to RVPA and CMPA. So we're charging them annually based on the cost recovery. I think
your question is going at two different concepts. So the charges for services are that Amelia's office is also the finance office for Central Rim Police and for Ross Valley Paramedic. So we charge them
I see.
a fee to provide that
I
service.
see. Okay.
So that's in this line. I think you're referring to, we do the billing on permits for Central Wind Fire, and then we just give that money to Central Wind Fire. That's when they provide a service because someone came to get a permit from Larkspur, and that's not reflected in these numbers because that's going out to another agency and we're just collecting it.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so on this slide, you'll see the City of Larkspur property tax revenue that we received beginning in fiscal year 14-15, all the way up to fiscal year 23-24. So these numbers are represented by blue bars, and the dollar amounts are in millions of dollars. The annual revenue forecast for 24-25 through fiscal year 29-30 is represented by the green bars. The city received $9.6 million in property tax revenue in fiscal year 14-15 and experienced a growth rate averaging 5% or about 5% through fiscal year 23-24. Some years we had increases that were higher than other years, with double-digit increase of 10% in fiscal year 23-24. The city is estimating that the rate of increase will remain positive in the upcoming years, but it will also decelerate from its peak of 10% seen in 23-24. For fiscal year 25-26, the city estimated an adverse impact of $225,000 due to the Skylark apartment reassessment. And we are assuming that the adverse impact will be carried out in future years, future fiscal years. After accounting for the adverse impact, we're estimating an annual increase of 2.8% instead of 4% in 25-26. And thereafter, this will be followed by a 4% increase on average all the way up to 29-30 fiscal year.
I'm sorry, can I ask real quick, was the peak because the Skylark Apartments got repurchased and reassessed?
I do not believe so, but I'll let the city manager speak to this.
Yeah, so that peak had a number of factors come in. That is one of them, was that that's when the assessed value of the prime purchasing Skylark hit us. So we got a real positive spike. There was also quite a bit of reassessment of properties that done remodeling. We were coming out of one of our busiest years ever in terms of people really investing in their properties and getting reassessed upward as a result of that. We also had an unusually high amount of resale in that year. For whatever reason, that was the year a lot of people bought into Larkspur. So it's all captured there, and you see that spike. The other thing is spikes and dips sometimes in property tax have really nothing to do with sort of the economy, and they have more to do with the assessor catching up with certain processes that they do with different property owners. And sometimes, you know, we just get a note saying, by the way, we made an adjustment, and you don't really get a chance to sort of plan around that.
Do we know, is the Skylark reassessment, is that final at this point?
So we've requested the documents, and they're going to be available for public release, I'm told, in the next few weeks. So we'll have the ability to really dive in and understand. But my understanding today is it's a one-time, 1 year reassessment, and then the owner has to apply every year. What that means in practical terms, if I understand it correctly, and I am not an expert, is the assessor's holding the sale price as the assessed value of the property, but the assessment board is honoring that it will consider annually whether prevailing conditions warrant a temporary reassessment for 1 year.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, there are different outcomes though in the future, right? So we've tried to build in our assumption they'll continue to receive that in the foreseeable future, and wait and see what truly happens.
Thank you.
The other thing I just note before we move on, Amelia, I try to always remind the council and the public, the Marin assessor has an incredible track record of being accurate in their projections of what the property tax increase is going to be for a community. So we tend to put a lot of credence in the estimate that they gave us. So this is all based on where they think we are. This is actually the first year, though, in a while, our estimated increase is lower than the counties. We typically are a little bit higher, but we're a few tenths of a percent below. I don't know why, but it might signify that maybe that turnover of large property is starting to slow down, and the assessor's accounting for that.
Okay, so next chart is slide number 5. And it shows the city of Larkspur sales tax revenue beginning in fiscal year 14-15 through fiscal year 23-24. So this is represented by the blue bars. The annual forecast for fiscal year 24-25 through 29-30 is represented by the green bars. So sales tax is more volatile than property tax. We can see on the chart big swings in the percentage of changes from year to year, with 3 instances of double-digit increases and a minus 25% dip during the first year of the pandemic. We've seen a softening of the sales tax after the pandemic recovery in fiscal year 21-22, with a slight annual decrease, with the annual sales tax now leveling off at about $3 million in fiscal year 24-25, the current fiscal year. And we're projecting annual increases at 3% moving forward, and this is a conservative estimate. It could go higher or lower, but this is an average 3% basically that we're projecting.
And I'm sorry, Amelia, can you let us know what are the assumptions for 24-25 that's making it a negative 1.8?
I'm tracking sales tax on a monthly basis as the money is coming in. So this is what I'm seeing in the numbers.
Trend lowers.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And we also have HDL as a consultant who's helping us understand the tax trends. So I don't know if the city manager wants to comment on that.
Well, I think one thing, two things are going on. Generally, all across the state, we're hearing that sales tax is softening. So I think HDL is helping us build that into their expectations about the mix of businesses.
Was this
in Larkspur.
before January?
Yes,
Okay.
this trend was happening before January.
Okay.
And then the other thing is right now, if you kind of go out to our major sales tax generators, our shopping centers, they've sort of grown to where they're going to be. There's still some opportunities, there's still some vacancies, but it's sort of a natural attrition and turnover at this point. So some of those spikes you see in the past decade were big growths that occurred in our shopping centers as more businesses came online, as they redeveloped, and their opportunity to do that is less than it was before. So now if we're going to see growth from them or from other vacancies in town, it needs to be more sales tax generating businesses coming in to replace either non-sales tax generators or lower generators with higher generators.
Thank you.
So next slide, slide number 6. So this is showing the City of Larkspur transient occupancy tax, also known as the TOT revenue. And this is again for the same period, beginning fiscal year 14-15 through fiscal year 23-24. And we also have a projection starting 24-25 all the way up to fiscal year 29-30. TOT is a volatile source of revenue with a range of increases between 2 and 16% during that period that we're looking at, the historical period. And we've seen also a decrease of 3% in fiscal year 16-17. The pandemic had a significant adverse impact on the TOT revenue, with a decrease of 2/3 of the revenue, followed by a significant rebound to pre-pandemic level in fiscal year 22-23. As with the sales tax, we saw a softening of the TOT revenue in fiscal year 23-24, and future annual increases are conservatively projected at 2.5% a year.
So just a reminder, this is colloquially the hotel tax. So we try to keep anonymous who our generators are. It's not hard to figure out who the generator is since we don't have a lot of hotels in Larkspur. And so you can see that hotel activity has bounced back to pre-pandemic levels. That's a good thing that's happened. As a reminder for the council and the public, by policy, the council takes, for every dollar that comes in hotel tax, we take 90 cents and we put it in the general fund. We take 10 cents and it goes in a separate fund to invest back into the business community. So this is only the 90 cents that you're seeing in this chart. This is not all, that 10 cents is in a whole nother fund that we'll be talking about as we go through our budget sessions.
And I just want to make one comment. I think this is really helpful to be able to see the time series and the changes. So thank you very much for this.
You're welcome. Next slide, slide number 7. This is the projected fiscal year 25-26 general fund expenditures. So looking at the chart, public safety makes up about 51% of total expenditures. Fire expenditures is estimated at $7.1 million, or 29% of the total expenditures for fiscal year 25-26. Police expenditures estimated at $5.4 million, or 22% of total expenditures. Expenditures of $7.6 million is for services such as library, recreation, streets, parks, engineering, planning, and building inspections. And lastly, administration along with city-wide contracts, debt service, city council, building maintenance, and PERS unfunded accrued liability are totaling 4.6 million. The total general fund expenditure for 25-26 is projected at 24.6 million. And this number does not include a transfer out of 1,481,000 to the debt service fund for the pension obligation bond. This is a below the line expenditure that is shown on the budget.
Just a few quick comments here. A reminder to the council, you're aware, community members who may be watching and have not seen or heard some of your discussions about public safety. We negotiated new labor contracts in both our public safety agencies in the last 2 years. And unfortunately for us, we were negotiating at a time when the industry had seen a significant increase in base compensation, and retention's been a real challenge. So unfortunately, these numbers reflect now these higher compensation amounts. We planned for these and we're dealing with them. The number we're struggling with each year, we've talked about that last year, is the volatility with PERS and the volatility they're having with their portfolio. For those who don't know, when PERS doesn't realize the gains or returns that it needs to realize or that it anticipated realizing, the member agencies essentially make up the difference. And there's a formula for doing that. So unfortunately, PERS continues to struggle to meet its targets. And as a result, that combined with a higher, I think, than anticipated retirement rate across the state has started to catch up to everybody. And then I've had a chance to point out to a few of you, I'm going to keep picking on the federal government, the current volatility, but in the 3 days after the announcement of tariffs, PERS lost $20 billion in their value in the portfolio. Now they have a $600 billion portfolio. So as a percentage, that's not as frightening maybe, but that $20 billion has to come from somewhere and it's going to come from us. So hopefully they get it back, but I suspect all of you are shaking your heads because you have a portfolio and you know what's going on and whether or not you've gained it all back. So we're monitoring that situation closely. If there's any questions you have about any of the expenditures, we're happy to talk about them.
I have a number of slides that follow this chart that explains the assumptions for the expenditures as well.
Can I, quick question? So things like streets, you know, I'm assuming this is the number coming from the general fund. Does that mean that other funds are coming into the general fund to pay this, or is this in addition to other funds that we have?
So this represents the staff people that work on our streets. So this is 3 dedicated maintenance workers who are constantly out on a daily basis fixing the streets. It's the portion of your engineering team when they're working on streets, and it's the maintenance supervisor, a portion of his compensation. That's what's reflected in this number. We do offset some of this cost with some of the transfer ins that you heard Amelia reference, but in general, this is mostly absorbed by the general fund. But again, it's mostly staffing costs.
And that's the same for parks and rec and all that stuff. That's staff costs that we're talking about?
Not entirely. So recreation would include its programming and equipment costs, and so would these 2 maintenance divisions as well. I mean, it's not entirely staff, but it's the equipment they need. So parks, it's the cost of running a leaf blower or lawnmower or whatever piece of equipment. You know, we have a very modest fleet, but we do have a fleet of vehicles. All of that cost of maintenance is built into these. And when we meet in May, you'll get the line items so we can go into the detail behind these numbers.
And I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm asking a lot of questions. You're on the revenues, the charges for services, would that include, you know, if we're charging for services and whether it's a rec department or whatever it is, is that coming in on that other chart to make up for this, or is that different?
Yes.
The
So
rental fees,
yes,
that for
rec-
recreation.
yes.
Well, those things are
Actually, recreation's a nice little, it's modest, but a nice healthy stream that addresses a lot of it.
right. So the income and the outputs are relatively balanced, even though here it doesn't necessarily show it that way.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so next slide is slide number 8. The city of Larkspur is a member of the Central Marin Police Authority, and as such makes an annual contribution to fund the police operations. So the blue bars on the chart show the city of Larkspur's annual contribution starting in fiscal year 1920 through fiscal year 24-25, and the annual contribution reached almost $5 million in the current fiscal year and grew at an average rate of 5% over time. The projected contribution for 25-26 is expected to grow by about 8% to $5.36 million. This is mainly due to the recent labor contract agreement. The growth rate forecast for the out years is conservatively estimated at 3.5% each year.
I just want to say on behalf of the police council and this council, as well as the other 2 member agencies, it's been a heavy lift and it's painful to see your payroll costs go up like this, especially because part of being in this JPA is to make more predictable, smooth increases in costs. But since we made these changes, our retention rate has improved dramatically, and we actually have a potential to be fully staffed in the police agency by the end of this calendar year for the first time in years. So it is working like it was supposed to by making us market competitive again.
And can I ask a question? I remember the last time I was at the police council meeting, we talked about the vacancy factor and how there was like $1 million in that account. Is that coming back to us at all? Or,
That's a good question. Two answers to that.
Uh-huh.
One is any money at the end of the year gets
Uh-huh.
credited toward the charge. So we would see it reflected when we reconcile books at the end of the year.
okay,
So the other thing is the management committee, and Amelia happens to be the finance director for the police authority,
Mhm.
have been working together, and we're going to introduce vacancy control for the first time in the agency. So we're going to assume there's always a vacancy. And in this case, I think it's 2.5 vacancies.
2.5 FTEs.
And that's pending
budgeted.
approval. That's their
Vacancy.
budget's going to the police council next month. So, yeah, next month.
It's, I believe, May
Yeah.
12th.
So we have the numbers in draft form that we're
Mhm.
presenting to you here.
Okay. But this number includes that credit
vac-
back or?
Yes, it
Not,
includes,
well, not the
or-
credit back, because
Oh.
we don't know what that number is yet.
Oh, okay.
It does include the vacancy control going forward.
Okay. Okay. But we might potentially get some money back this year once you guys close the books and do the true up.
Basically, our budgeted share is this number,
Uh-huh.
but the actual number we're going to have to pay the agency
Yeah.
might be less because we may receive a credit
Right.
when we close their books.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is excludes the credit, potential credit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, just so I understand, the past numbers include the actual vacancy numbers that we got back, and the futures are projected based on 2.5. Is that?
So in the past, the agency has always fully funded all its positions, regardless of whether they were vacant. And then at the end of the year, when they close their books, the member agencies would get a credit against their contribution to the agency. So we'd see the money back, but the police agency would be holding the money, right? The general fund of each member agency had to make that contribution during the year and then sees it come back at the end. We're going to essentially change that going forward, and we're going to build a vacancy assumption into the budget so that true up stops, right? Because if you've done it correctly, you've correctly predicted sort of the amount of vacancy, but you're seeing that relief in the charge to your general fund up front.
Does this give us the risk, though, that we estimate 2.5 vacancies and then they get filled and then we have to cut them a check at the end of the year?
They do have some reserve. We think we're okay in any given year. Yes, there's a risk. Yes, we may have to come with our hand out to each member agency if that unlikely scenario were to happen. And even though I just told you, I'm excited that they're close to being fully staffed. The reality is people retire, people change agencies, And the data tell us that over the course of an entire fiscal year, they're going to experience periods when they're not fully staffed. So I don't know if we may refine that vacancy control number before we get to the end, and we certainly will be spending a whole fiscal year studying it. But we feel confident we can start building it into the budget. So again, essentially, we're pulling forward what we've been doing as a credit, and that gives all the member agencies relief in their budget planning and relief in what they have to send as cash out the door to the police agency. Essentially, the member agencies are going to hold that cash all year in their bank accounts rather than send it to Central Marin's bank account.
Just
Thank you.
for clarification purposes, the excess funds at the end of the fiscal year do not return to the member agencies in their bank account. It stays with the Central Marin Police in their fund balance, and it's attributable to each agency that have paid into them. So, so that's the practice, historical practice.
But now we're gonna get it back. Is that the?
Well, well,
Okay.
that's an accountant's reaction.
Okay.
So city manager's reaction is you're seeing it as a credit, right? It's correct, the cash never comes back to us, right? But what happens is essentially the agency, Amelia calculates out, she closes the books with the auditors. She figures out this agency finished with $1 million because of the vacancies or whatever the number is. And then you say, okay, that means we don't need to bill $1 million to the member agencies. So we're going to essentially flow it to the member agencies by calculating a credit in the current fiscal year.
Okay.
The difference now is essentially we're pulling that credit forward. We're never giving that $1 million to the police authority. That's the change. So yeah, so we don't confuse the public. Larkspur taxpayers are not losing out. This is a benefit because we're improving the way we're going to do budgeting for the city, for the town of Corte Madera, for the town of San Anselmo. We don't feel we're creating a lot of risk for anybody. And we think cash management ultimately will be better for everybody this way.
Good.
Oh, I just wanted to ask quickly, so what does that credit for 2.5 full-time employees equal approximately?
$424,000.
Okay, thank you.
And then the year where we do the vacancy control. So I mean, as I see it, the easiest way to think about it is if those positions were never filled, it's just a shuffle. So the next year we have the extra money that we pay. And I mean, so the blue bars essentially stay level. But now if those positions are filled, there's not only inflationary costs, but the full staffing, because we're not going to be credited back. There's nothing to vacancy decontrol. So police costs are going up because now we have a fuller police force and we have inflation on top of that to the tune of 5 or 8% or whatever the amount was. Yeah.
It is, but Ms. Gabrielle, the chief, and the management committee have the benefit of being able to study the census of the agency down to who's close to retirement age,
Yeah.
who's sending signals to the chief that they might put in papers to go get a job else at another agency. We have that actual information to help inform the decision that we're recommending.
And I mean, essentially the vacancy control benefits our cash flow position because we have the money and then it's at the end, we pay as normal. We don't just kind of prepay and then get not really a credit, but another payment forward. So, okay. And then sorry, the only other thing is this, we're only talking about police, fire, I guess is coming up. It's assuming.
Yeah, one more thing before we leave the slide though, to emphasize, part of what is causing the spike in this coming fiscal year isn't just personnel costs. It's also that the management committee in the current fiscal year had identified some reserves and one-time money that could be shifted into the budget to give the member agencies relief for this current fiscal year. You can only do that one time. So some of that spike is because we enjoyed a little bit of a cushion against increased costs in our current fiscal year. And now we need to absorb that increase in the coming fiscal year. Okay.
Okay.
Amelia was nodding, so I got that one right.
Yes. All right, slide number 9. Okay, the City of Larkspur is a member of the Central Marin Fire Authority, and as such makes an annual contribution to fund the fire operations. Again, the blue bars are showing the actuals from fiscal year 1920 through fiscal year 24-25. The annual contribution reached almost 6.37 million in the current fiscal year and grew at an average of 6% over time, with 2 of the years experiencing a double-digit growth. The projected contribution for 25-26 fiscal year is expected to grow by 9% to $6.94 million. This fiscal year 24-25 increase of 12% is mainly due to the recent labor contract agreement. The growth rate forecast for fiscal year 26-27 is estimated at 7.3% based on preliminary data we received from the fire management, and the out years are conservatively estimated at 3.5%. I'm going to pause to see if the city manager wants to add any comments.
This is that first painful year, new contracts coming online. This is almost entirely increased personnel costs. When I started my career, if you hired a firefighter, you could almost take to the bank that person was going to work for you for their entire career. Firefighters almost never left their agencies. Some of us received an email where the chief announced that he's hired 2 firefighters away from another local agency. It really is almost unheard of that that would be happening, but now it's not unheard of. It's becoming the new norm. The system of compensation, the system of pensions has changed, and the incentive for an employee to stay at an agency is not as strong as it used to be. So they're looking around for agencies where they like the pay and they like the culture. And one thing I will say about Central Marin, with this contract, they have the pay and they also have a very attractive culture. If you ask around the county, it's known as a very positive agency. So it's a heavy lift, but I also want to remind this council, the council that helped form the Central Marin Fire Authority, we had a long discussion about, we were essentially taking 2 skeleton fire agencies, 2 fire departments that were not operating at full capacity. We were merging them with a goal of getting to a fully functional agency. So we always knew the first decade was going to be a little bit painful till we could get to that goal for the community. I think we're there, and we're going to start having tough conversations at the fire authority about what the next decade looks like. And that involves people power, it involves stations, it involves all of that. So more to come.
Dan, can you remind us the negotiated new contracts? What is the term on those contracts? Were they 3-year contracts?
It's a 3-year contract.
So when we project out that in the next 5 years, they're going to grow 3.5%, is that assuming we're not going to have that same negotiation in 3 years?
We needed to put something in. We put something in slightly above CPI, assuming that, hoping that the world and what we need to pay becomes a little more back to what we were used to, and we don't have a big spike.
Okay.
But that's an assumption. So that's one, check in with us again in, May of 26 to May of 27, and we'll see what's reality.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide shows the forecast of revenue and expenditures for the next 5 years. So we're not looking at historical data here, we're only looking at forecast. So for fiscal year 25-26, the city is estimating $25.8 million in revenue and transfer in, and $26.1 million in expenditure and transfer out. So this shows a negative change in fund balance of $275,000. This amount is available in the general fund balance for the intended purpose of the expenditure. So we have, of the $275,000, we have about $50,000 that will go to an IT refresh project, which the city has set aside funds in the fund balance for that based on prior decisions that were made by council, I believe. And then the remaining $225,000 is because of the issue with Skylark Apartment. So we are assuming that we will be using fund balance to absorb the loss of revenue at this time.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I know you want to jump into the detail. I really want to acknowledge that getting to where the gap's that small was a lot of work because the staff gives me their initial number to give Amelia the initial numbers. And then we go, holy smokes, a gap. No, we're bringing that down. So there's a lot built into how we got to there, but we worked hard knowing we were wrestling with the increased costs at the two public safety agencies, and we were dealing with the PERS hit. We couldn't predict the big hit we're taking in the property tax. So that's something we're still trying to see if we could find another way to close that gap, but I can tell you it was a big lift to get almost to zero before we knew about the property tax issue.
Well, my concern is the next couple of years,
So-
which, unless I'm reading this wrong.
No, you're reading it correctly.
All right.
So, when you do a forecast, you in your out years, if you're doing it correctly in your out years, you probably are seeing a graph like this because when you're operating a government, you're trying to operate at net zero. So and when you see that expenditures are starting to trend in the wrong direction, if you don't expect CPI to keep up or growth in revenue to keep up, you end up with a gap. And so this is alarming, right? It is alarming, but it's also a call to action for the council and the staff that we have a job to do in the coming fiscal year, which is to say, if our assumptions are correct or reasonably correct, we can't do business as usual. So we have to ask ourselves, can we bring expenditures down and change these trend lines? Can we bring revenues up? Or some combination of the two to get this gap closed. And that's what that heavy lift will be in the next year. I expect we'll be talking about that a lot. We need to take you now through an exercise on the expenditure side, and we need to talk to you about this is the ideal level of service a recreation department should provide. This is actually what we provide. This is what we would provide if we cut, right? And then you that way have the information you need to make an informed choice. And we need to do that for everything, every service. We've done that. Some of you have been on the council. You've done that exercise with me before. We talk about what's mandated. We talk about if it's not mandated, are we doing it because the council told us to? Are we doing it because the community just expects us to? And in those two categories, those two last ones are the ones you can play with. And I think for our newer council members who haven't gone through that exercise, you'll be quite surprised how much of what we do are in those last two categories. Cities, unlike counties, a lot of people read about the county government. We don't have so many mandates on us. A lot of what we do is because it's what the community expects or what the council as the community's voice tells us to do. And so you have the ability to say, okay, money's tight, change expectations, change service levels, or, hey, I'm not comfortable with that. How much can we pull out of our rainy day fund if we think 3 years from now the picture's going to be better, right? We have to have that conversation. And the good news is your staff is still working. We've been working really hard to get this gap to a point we can bring you a budget you can approve this year. And then we roll up our sleeves and we work on it all next year. That's sort of what I envision. And like I said, we're going to be doing it where we do something I've never had to do before, which is come to you, I think, every other month saying, assumptions were off, world just changed again, or feeling good about things are getting better. I hope it's the latter.
And I ask, oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to ask, with your experience with other budgets, other cities and counties, things like that, is spending 51% on public safety standard?
It's actually lower than standard. We're doing better, even with that.
Yeah, okay.
I was always taught you should be panicking when you're over 60%, and you should be you've created an unsustainable long-term problem when you're over 70%. 50, you're getting nervous. This isn't looking good. But remember, you're ultimately, I like to quote a former council member, you're in the quality of life business and it starts with public safety, right? That's a core of what you do. So a lot of your budget's always going to be absorbed, making sure those services are where people want them to be. As a manager, has been very intimately involved in both of those JPAs. Neither of them is anywhere near a Cadillac service. I can tell you that Larkspur could not afford the level of service we're getting on our own. It's because we have partners that we're able to get the level of service. But that doesn't mean we can't have a discussion with our fellow member agencies about whether for some period of time, we need to adjust even that public safety level of service. And hard part is, it's a lot of it's tied up in people. And so that all has to be part of the conversation. We're not there yet. We could get there.
As you can see on the chart, for the out years, the expenditures are expected to outpace the revenue over time. And this is based on conservative revenue assumptions. So we have to keep this in mind. Overall, the growth rate of expenditures is slightly above 3%, and the growth rate of revenue is slightly below 3%. So it's not a big gap from a percentage standpoint. And one thing I want to mention is one of the factors causing this gap is the unexpected CalPERS, unfunded accrued liability cost that came in at a higher than but initially budgeted. For fiscal year 25-26, we believe that this cost can be absorbed as part of our operating budget. In future years, we may need to use some or all of the contingency fund that was created. I think it was 2.5 million that was set aside for future unexpected CalPERS cost increases.
Amelia, I'm just thinking about the where we can find additional revenue, and it may not be immediate, but how is the housing pipeline looking? And could you ask maybe Elise to see what is anything happening with the housing elements, like a rebuilding
Yeah, so
anything?
revenue will also be a big part of the conversation, and we're going to take you, whether it's the council or in the past, the council's appointed an ad hoc committee to really dive into the weeds with me about all the array of options. I actually know that Vice Mayor Andre, you and Councilmember Margulies got to hear a presentation at the League of Cities new council members session about from the city of El Cerrito. And one of the things they talked about is be optimistic about housing, but don't build your budget around housing, right? So your question's on point in that we do think there's some development that could greatly enhance our revenue. I'm particularly thinking of whether the Ross Valley Sanitary District realizes its plans to develop its rather significant piece of land in Larkspur Landing. It's in the housing element, so they now know what they're entitled to. They've been talking about it in public meetings. I just hope they pull the trigger one of these days, because that would be a big boon to us. We won't bank on it in our assumptions, right? We'll work as if it's not going to happen, but if it happens, a lot of this changes for us.
Thank you.
So on the next slide, you can see the forecast assumptions. As I mentioned earlier, property tax is estimated at about 4% annually in the upcoming year. Sales tax is estimated at 3% annually, TOT 2.5%, and then charges for services and building permits estimated at 2.5% increase annually based on future CIP or CPI, I should say. For fiscal year 25-26, city staff anticipates a one-time revenue of approximately $575,000. That includes a $175,000 grant from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, $160,000 from Measure B, and $240,000 from Measure G. These one-time funds are fully programmed in the fiscal year 25-26 preliminary budget as expenditures. Next slide, slide number 12. This chart shows the general fund expenditures assumptions for the major expenditure lines that were used to build the financial outlook forecast. The first two expenditure lines show a forecast for public safety, police and fire. And as I previously indicated, we see a higher growth rate in 25-26, mainly due to the recent labor contract agreement, and an annual growth rate is estimated conservatively at an average of 3.5%. The next two expenditure line on this chart are the CalPERS unfunded accrued liability and retiree health OPEB. As I mentioned earlier, the unfunded accrued liability is an unexpected cost for which there's a contingency fund balance of about $2.5 million that was set aside by your council previously. The next two expenditure lines are debt service for the pension obligation bond and the Bay City self-insured cost estimate. Both are expected to grow between 3.5% and 4% over the upcoming years. The next expenditure line on the chart is the employee salaries and benefits. The chart is showing no increase in expenditure for salaries and benefits in 25-26 fiscal year. The preliminary budget that will be presented to your council will include two positions currently vacant that are proposed to be unfunded. The estimate for salaries and benefit includes a COLA of 3% for employees and a health premium increase of 10% for the upcoming year, and then averaging between 6 and 10% for future years. The last expenditure line represents all remaining expenses not listed above in the chart. Some line items within this category include increases of 3.5% to 4% for inflation, and there are other line items where we were able to reduce expenditure or eliminate expenditures. The 7.5% decrease in 26-27 fiscal year is due to the one-time expenditure of $575,000 in fiscal year 25-26 that will not repeat itself in future years. And then the composition of the expenditure for the $575,000 is basically the MTC grant. So any expenditures related to this grant, the purchase of a water pump, and the purchase of a mobile generator to be paid with one-time funds. I'm going to pause to see if the city manager would like to add any comments.
I think these are the trends we've been telling you about throughout this presentation. We're happy to talk about them some more.
Okay, I have a question. So the OPEB number, is that the full amount or is that the minimum amount that we can put in?
That is the pay-as-you-go amount.
Uh-huh.
So every month we receive an invoice from CalPERS
Uh-huh.
or retirees that are actively enrolled in retiree medical, and then we have to pay for those costs.
That's the
So-
real cost of the premium of the retirees. So
Okay.
it's not the money your actuary was telling you should
Uh-huh.
be putting aside
Oh,
for
I see.
saving up for the future,
So this is just the actual expense.
Yes.
Okay.
which is in that report. Because if you go open the OPEB report, it has it broken into two parts, the pay-go part and the part you ought to be putting in the bank.
Yeah. So, okay. I was confused as to which piece this was. So there's no discretion. We cannot decide not to pay this.
That is
Okay.
correct.
And same for the CalPERS unfunded liability. That number is also no discretion, like no,
That's a contractually
That's in
obligated
contract,
amount.
okay.
Yes.
okay, got it.
City manager.
I would just say that's
Thank you.
also the number that's, so they give every year, they publish a new amortization schedule, right? So this is what's on the schedule now, but if they have poor returns, then you get a new amortization schedule with worse numbers on it. So just be aware of that.
So future years, the numbers can change. So we receive the actual report from CalPERS annually, usually in July of each year. So the numbers you're seeing on this chart is based on the actual report that was published in July of 2024. and based on the amortization schedule included in that report for the city of Larkspur.
And I want to commend you on the 0% change in salaries and benefits. I've done a lot of budgets, and I think this is the first time I've ever seen that. So
So that's being
that, but that has
accomplished.
two.
I
Is there a
do wanna-
footnote on that one?
Well, I do want to acknowledge that, last year we froze a position to give us some relief. We're carrying that forward. So that doesn't give us relief in the upcoming budget, but it also doesn't build another expense. We've also frozen 2 additional positions. So we're achieving some of these salary savings by not filling 2 positions. There are 2 positions we feel we can continue to offer service. We don't feel the public will perceive a loss of service. We've had to make some administrative choices about some things we might do differently or not do, but they're not things that we think will affect the public.
Well, thank you for getting that number.
Right. Next chart or next slide, this is the next steps. So today I presented the 5-year financial outlook with the city manager. Over the coming weeks, the city will be refining its revenue and expenditure assumptions for fiscal year 25-26, and will be returning to your council on May 7th with a budget session and another budget session on May 21st. And the goal is to adopt the budget on June 4th.
Yeah, so in those May sessions, you'll get line item budgets for different departments. With the second May session, you'll essentially have the entire preliminary budget to review. That's your opportunity to really dive into parts, any lines that concern you, interest you, give us feedback as we make final refinements. We take your recommendations and your requests and incorporate them into the June budget proposal. So, tentatively, I think we're bringing administration and the 2 community services departments at the first May meeting. So the department heads will be here to not only address their line items, but tell you what they're accomplishing in the current fiscal year, what they'd like to be accomplishing in the next fiscal year. And then we'll bring you community development and public works in the second session. And of course, then we'll have the whole budget to dive into on June 4. And just a reminder, we focus heavily on the general fund, but the council by policy has created a number of other funds. And as we go through our budget discussions, we will start to touch on some of those other funds and the opportunities they present, and what, given the guidance we've received from the council in the past, what we're recommending in those various funds.
Great. Well, thank you for a very thorough presentation, Mr. City Manager and Ms. Gabrielle. Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments? Any comments from the public? Do we have anyone still online? Any comments from our Zoom?
For any raised hands from the Zoom audience members. And there's no public comment.
Okay, great.
I do want to just acknowledge, because you have a department head who's watching online, and this is the kind of team we have. She couldn't help but let me know to answer your question, Vice Mayor. She's getting a lot of inquiries on a number of key properties, including the one we talked about, and she's cautiously optimistic for the coming year.
Excellent. Thank you, our community service, our community development director. Thank you, Elise. Yes. All right, so that brings us to, okay, we are not doing a closed session tonight.
The mayor's asked to defer the closed session so she can participate.
Great. That brings us to adjournment. We are hereby adjourned.